The spoon slipped from her hand and struck the plate with a sharp sound that cut through the soft dinner chatter. Everyone froze. My daughter-in-law, Emily, stared down at the table as if something terrible was written there. Her shoulders trembled once. Then again, before anyone could speak, tears dropped onto her untouched food. I had hosted Sunday dinners for 30 years. I had seen arguments, laughter, awkward silences, even grief. But I had never seen someone cry like this at my table. Not quietly. Not politely. This was the kind of crying that came from somewhere deep and long ignored. "Emily," my son Daniel said softly. "What's wrong?" She didn't answer. Her hands clenched in her lap. Her breathing turned uneven. I stood up instinctively, reaching for her, but she flinched slightly, as if afraid of being touched. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to ruin dinner." "You didn't ruin anything," I said, though my heart had already begun to pound. "Talk to us." Daniel looked confused. Worried. He loved her. That much was obvious. They had been married just over a year. A quiet courthouse wedding. No big celebration. No honeymoon photos. Emily had always been polite, kind, distant in a way I couldn't quite name. She wiped her face quickly, as if ashamed of the tears. "I'm fine." Really, but she wasn't. I noticed the way her eyes avoided Daniel's. The way her fork never returned to the plate. The way she seemed trapped between speaking and staying silent. Daniel reached for her hand. She let him, but her fingers were cold. He said gently, "You're scaring me." That was when she broke. "I can't do this anymore," she said, her voice cracking. "I can't keep pretending." Pretending. The word settled heavily in the air. Pretending to enjoy dinner? Pretending to be okay? Or pretending about something much bigger? My husband had passed away 3 years earlier, but in that moment I felt the familiar ache of wishing he were there. He had always been able to read people better than I could. Daniel swallowed. Pretending about what? Emily finally looked up. Her eyes were red, swollen, full of something that wasn't just sadness. It was fear, guilt, and something else I didn't want to name yet. "About why I married you," she said. The room went silent. I felt my stomach drop. Daniel laughed once, nervously. "What are you talking about?" Emily pulled her hand away. "I married you for the wrong reason," she said. Those words hit like a slap. I watched my son's face change, confusion giving way to disbelief. "Emily, that's not funny." "I know," she whispered. "That's why I'm crying." My heart began to race. I had worried about many things since Daniel's marriage. Whether they were happy, whether money was tight, whether they argued too much. But never this sentence. I sat back down slowly. "Emily," I said carefully, "if there's something you need to say, say it. But understand, words like that can't be taken back." She nodded. "I know." She took a deep breath, then another, as if steadying herself for a fall. "You deserve the truth," she said, looking at Daniel. "And so do you," she added, turning to me, "especially you." My chest tightened. "Why me?" "Because," she said softly, "you're the reason I didn't speak sooner." Daniel looked between us. "Mom, what does that mean?" Emily's voice trembled again. "When I first met you, Mrs. Harris, I saw the life you built. The stability, the safety, the kind of family I never had." A cold unease crept over me. "I didn't grow up with love," she continued. "I grew up with survival." Daniel shook his head. "Emily, everyone has baggage." "That doesn't mean, I didn't marry you because I fell in love," she said, finally saying it plainly. The words hung there, unbearable. I heard my own heartbeat in my ears. Daniel stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. "That's not true. I wanted it to be," she cried. "I tried so hard to make it true." "Then why?" he demanded. "Why marry me at all?" Emily pressed her hands to her face, then lowered them slowly. Her eyes met mine again, and in that moment I understood something terrible. This wasn't just about love, it was about need. "I married him," she said quietly, "because I was desperate." Daniel's voice dropped. "Desperate for what?" She swallowed hard. "For a way out." The room felt suddenly smaller, the walls closer. "A way out of where?" I asked. She hesitated, then she said the words that would change everything. From the man who would have destroyed me if I hadn't said yes to your son. Daniel went pale. I felt the blood drain from my face. The dinner table, once warm and familiar, now felt like the edge of a cliff. And Emily hadn't even told us the worst part yet. Daniel didn't sit back down. He stood there, hands clenched at his sides, staring at Emily like she was someone he had never met. Destroyed you, he repeated. Emily, what are you talking about? She looked smaller somehow, curled inward as if bracing herself. I didn't plan to say it tonight, I swear, but once it started, I couldn't stop. I took a slow breath, then start from the beginning. She nodded, tears slipping again, but her voice steadied as if she had rehearsed this confession 1,000 times in her head. I grew up moving from place to place, she said. My mother married men who needed her money, her silence, or her body. None of them needed me. By the time I was 16, I learned how to stay quiet, how to read moods, how to survive. Daniel's jaw tightened. He had never heard this version of her life. Neither had I. When I was 23, she continued, I met Aaron. The name fell heavy. He was charming at first, older. Confident, he said all the right things, he made me feel chosen. She let out a bitter laugh. I didn't realize chosen can be another word for trapped. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. He paid my rent. Bought me things, told me I didn't need anyone else. Then slowly, he made sure I didn't have anyone else. Daniel sat down at last, his face rigid. Why didn't you tell me any of this? Because I didn't think it mattered anymore, she said. I thought I had escaped. She looked down at her hands. By the time I met you, Daniel, I was already planning how to disappear. Disappear, he started getting violent, she said softly. Not all at once. Just enough to scare me, enough to remind me who had power. My stomach twisted. Emily, I tried to leave, she said. I really did, but he followed me, showed up at my job. At my apartment, he told me if I ever left him completely, he'd make sure I regretted it. Daniel's voice was hoarse. So where do I come in? She lifted her eyes to him. You were safe, kind, predictable in the best way. You had a family. A home, a future. The words were gentle but cut deep. When Aaron found out about you, she said, everything changed. My heart began to pound. He knew about Daniel? Yes, she whispered. He hated you, but he was careful. He told me if I married you, he'd let me go. Daniel stared at her. Let you go? He didn't want me, she said. He wanted control. Marrying you meant I belonged to someone else in the only way he respected. The silence was suffocating. So you married me, Daniel said slowly, to save yourself. Emily nodded. At first, I didn't expect to start caring, she said quickly. I didn't expect you to be patient, to listen, to treat me like I mattered. That's what made it worse. Worse? He asked. Because I started to love you, she said, voice breaking. And I hated myself for lying to you. I felt tears sting my own eyes. This wasn't a villain's confession, this was a survivor unraveling. Then why now? I asked quietly. Why tonight? Emily's gaze drifted to the window. Because he found me again. Daniel shot to his feet. What? She flinched at his tone. 2 weeks ago, outside the grocery store. He didn't come close, he didn't touch me, he just smiled and said congratulations on the marriage. My breath caught. Did you tell the police? They can't do anything, she said. He didn't threaten me, not directly. Daniel ran his hands through his hair. Why didn't you tell me the moment it happened? Because I was scared, she said. And because I knew if I told you everything, you might look at me the way you're looking at me now. He stopped pacing. How am I looking at you? He asked. She hesitated, like you don't know who you married. The truth of that hung between them. I stood up and placed my hand on Daniel's arm. Sit down, I said gently. Anger can wait, understanding can't. He sat, slowly. Emily inhaled deeply. Aaron told me he didn't care that I was married. He said he just wanted to make sure I remembered who I really belonged to. My blood ran cold, and tonight, she continued, he called me. Daniel's face drained of color. Called you? Yes, she said. While we were eating. That explained the vibration. The tears. The collapse. What did he say? I asked. She swallowed. He said marriages built on lies always fall apart. And that when mine does, he'll be there. Daniel's hands trembled. Emily, I didn't marry you to hurt you, she said desperately. I married you to survive, but somewhere along the way, survival turned into love. And now I don't know which truth is worse. The room felt unbearably quiet. Daniel stood again, but this time his voice was softer. Are you still afraid of him? She nodded. Every day? He took a long breath, then said something none of us expected. Then you're not facing him alone anymore. Emily looked up, startled. What? She whispered. Daniel's eyes filled with pain, but also resolve. You should have told me. I'm hurt, I'm angry, but I meant my vows. And if someone thinks he can haunt my wife, he's wrong. I felt a surge of pride and fear at the same time. Emily broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. But even as Daniel pulled her into his arms, I couldn't shake the feeling tightening in my chest. Because men like Aaron don't let go easily, and something told me this story was far from over. That night, no one slept. Emily lay awake beside Daniel, staring at the ceiling, listening to every creak of the house as if it might be Aaron's footsteps. Daniel watched her in the dark, realizing how much of her fear he had mistaken for distance, how many silences he had ignored because he trusted love to explain itself. In the guest room down the hall, I sat on the edge of the bed with my phone in my hand, debating whether to call the police, a lawyer, or someone I didn't even know how to explain this to. I had raised my son to believe the world was mostly safe. That belief felt fragile now. Morning came too quickly. Emily flinched when the doorbell rang. Daniel checked the time. It's just the mail, he said, though he didn't sound convinced. She followed him anyway, every step cautious. The envelope wasn't threatening. No name, just a folded piece of paper inside. Emily's hands shook as she opened it. Daniel read over her shoulder. One sentence. You can run, but you can't rewrite the truth. Emily dropped the paper like it burned her. That's him, she whispered. That's how he writes. Daniel crushed the note in his fist. We're calling the police. They'll ask for proof, she said. He never leaves proof. He leaves reminders. I watched my son struggle between rage and helplessness, a conflict no parent ever wants to see in their child. The next few days were tense but quiet. Too quiet. Daniel insisted Emily stay home from work. He adjusted his schedule. I checked in constantly, pretending it was concern, not fear. Then came the knock. It was a Tuesday afternoon, rain tapping lightly against the windows. Emily was in the kitchen when the sound came, sharp and deliberate. 3 knocks. Not rushed, not hesitant, confident. Daniel moved toward the door before Emily could stop him. Daniel, don't, she whispered. He opened it anyway. A man stood there, smiling politely, dressed too neatly for the weather. His eyes flicked past Daniel, straight to Emily. Emily, he said calmly. You look well. She froze. Daniel stepped forward. You need to leave. Aaron's smile didn't fade. I just came to talk. You're trespassing, Daniel said. Aaron raised his hand slightly, mock surrender. I won't stay long. Emily found her voice. You promised. I promised to let you marry him, Aaron replied smoothly. I never promised to disappear. I felt something dark and protective rise in me. You need to leave my house, I said firmly. He finally looked at me, studying my face. You must be the mother. You raised a good man. Shame he doesn't know what he married. Daniel lunged forward, but Emily grabbed his arm. Please, she said. Don't. Aaron's eyes flicked to her grip on Daniel's sleeve. Something like jealousy crossed his face, quickly masked. I just wanted to remind you, he said softly, lies have consequences. Then he turned and walked away, rain soaking into his coat as if none of this had mattered at all. The door slammed shut. Emily collapsed into a chair, shaking uncontrollably. Daniel stood frozen, fists clenched. I should have hit him. No, I said. That's what he wants. That night, Emily finally told us everything she hadn't said before. How Aaron monitored her phone, how he controlled her money, how he once locked her in a room for 2 days to teach her loyalty. How he knew exactly how to scare without bruises. Daniel listened in silence, every word carving deeper. I didn't think I deserved better, she said, then I met you. He took her hands. You do, and I'm not letting him take this from us. But fear doesn't vanish because someone promises protection. It waits. 2 nights later, Daniel's car wouldn't start. The mechanic found sugar in the tank. The message was clear. Emily stared at the ruined engine and whispered, "He's escalating." I knew then that this wasn't just about a marriage built on shaky beginnings. It was about survival all over again, and this time, the cost of silence could be everything. The police station smelled like old coffee and paper. Emily sat between Daniel and me, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She looked smaller than she had at dinner days ago, as if fear was slowly erasing her presence. The officer listened, took notes, asked calm, careful questions. "Do you have any recorded threats?" he asked. Emily shook her head. "He's careful, he never says enough." "Witnesses?" the officer continued. I spoke up. "He came to my house, I told him to leave." The officer nodded. "That helps, but without direct threats or physical harm, our options are limited." Daniel clenched his jaw. "So we just wait until he hurts her?" "No," the officer said gently. "You document everything. Times, dates, notes, calls, and if he shows up again, you call us immediately." We left with pamphlets, advice, and a heavy sense of unfinished business. That night, Emily barely spoke. When Daniel went to shower, she turned to me. "You hate me, don't you?" The question hit me hard. "Why would you think that?" "Because I built my marriage on a lie," she said, "because I put your son in danger." I took her hands, surprising both of us. "You didn't choose danger. You chose life, and now you're choosing truth, that matters." Her eyes filled again. What if the truth destroys him? I thought of my son, pacing the living room, planning, protecting, refusing to look away. "Then we rebuild," I said. "Families do that." But even as I said it, fear gnawed at me. The first crack came 2 days later. Daniel's boss called. "We received a complaint," he said, "someone claiming Daniel threatened them." Daniel laughed in disbelief. "I've never," they said. "They fear for their safety," the boss continued. "Until this is resolved, we're placing you on leave." Emily went pale. "He's isolating us." Then came the second blow. Their joint account was flagged for suspicious activity. Frozen pending investigation. Aaron knew where to strike. "He's trying to make you feel trapped again," Daniel said. It won't work, but it was working. Emily stopped leaving the house. She checked locks twice. 3 times, she slept in short bursts, waking at every sound. One evening, as I was leaving to get groceries, I noticed something tied to the gate. A ribbon. Red. Emily's breath caught when she saw it. "He used to do that," she whispered. "When he wanted me to know he'd been close." I ripped it down, my hands shaking. "That's it. We're getting a restraining order." Aaron contested it. In court, he wore a concerned expression. Spoke softly. Presented himself as a misunderstood ex worried about Emily's well-being. "She's unstable," he said calmly. "I only wanted to make sure she was safe." Emily sat silently, knuckles white. The judge denied the order. Not enough evidence. Outside the courthouse, Emily collapsed against Daniel, sobbing. "He's never going to stop." Daniel held her tightly, but I saw something new in his eyes. Fear. That night, the power went out. No storm, no warning. Just darkness. Emily screamed when the house fell silent. Daniel grabbed a flashlight. I called the power company. "All lines are fine," the operator said. "Looks like a manual shutoff." Someone had cut it. In the dark, my phone buzzed. A message. "You should have stayed quiet." I didn't need to ask who sent it. Daniel saw my face. "What?" I showed him the screen. He looked at Emily, then back at me. "We're not safe here," Emily whispered. "He's punishing us for speaking." And in that moment, I understood something terrifying. The truth hadn't freed us. It had painted a target. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not in temperature, but in feeling. Hard benches, hard faces. A place where pain was translated into facts and dates and evidence. Emily sat between Daniel and me, her posture straight, her hands steady. The woman who once shook at the sound of a doorbell now waited calmly for the man who had controlled her life. Aaron entered in handcuffs. He didn't look at Emily. That was how I knew he had lost. the prosecutor laid out the pattern. The testimonies of other women, the recorded voicemail, the video from the barn, each piece alone might have been dismissed. Together, they told a story impossible to ignore. Emily took the stand. Her voice didn't tremble. She spoke of fear, of manipulation, of survival. She spoke of how love built on safety can grow into something real, and how lies told to survive are not the same as lies told to harm. When she finished, she looked directly at Aaron for the first time. "You don't own my past," she said, "and you don't get my future." The verdict came quickly. Guilty. Aaron was sentenced to years he could no longer steal from anyone else. Outside the courthouse, Emily cried. Not from fear, from release. The months that followed were quiet, but not empty. Daniel returned to work. The frozen account was restored. The house felt like a home again, not a fortress. One evening, Daniel and Emily sat at the same dinner table where everything had unraveled. Emily spoke first. "If you want to leave, I'll understand." Daniel shook his head. "I stayed because I chose to. Not because I had to." She nodded. "Then I need to tell you something else." He smiled gently. "No more secrets. I don't want to be your wife because you saved me," she said. "I want to be your partner because I stand on my own now." Daniel reached across the table. "That's all I ever wanted." They renewed their vows quietly a month later. No guests. No speeches. Just honesty. I watched them, tears in my eyes, realizing something I hadn't expected. Families aren't built on perfect beginnings. They're built on what survives the truth. Sometimes love begins as refuge. Sometimes it grows into choice. And sometimes, the bravest thing a person can do is cry at the dinner table and finally tell the truth.